Today is Saturday, January 11th. In just over a week, President-elect Trump goes back to being leader of the free world. During the presidential campaign, he spoke a lot about immigration, taxes, inflation, healthcare, and more. And now he's going to get the chance to put his words into action. But what can we really expect out of his second term? And how will it be different from his first? Dr. Faucheux is here to offer his insights. Faucheux publishes Lunchtime Politics, a daily newsletter that covers nonpartisan political analysis and polling, and teaches at Georgetown University and George Washington University. Today, we get into what President-elect will try to accomplish, what he thinks Trump is just bluffing about, and much more. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Faucheux, thank you so much for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So first, let's just start really broad. And what comes to mind for you when you think about how you expect President-elect Trump to approach his second term as president?
The one thing we all are looking at is how it compares to his first term. And I think his first term, there was a sense that he didn't quite know what he was doing and what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And I think this time he and the people around him are much more sophisticated in understanding sort of the rules of the game, the parameters that they're going to have to deal with in terms of working with the federal government, working with the bureaucracy, working with the existing rules and the protocols, whether they like them or not. And so I think you see a more experienced, sophisticated approach this time than you did 8 years ago.
And do you think that will lead to more efficiency, more extreme policies, both? Or what does that actually mean?
Well, it could lead to all of that. In terms of Donald Trump's executive orders, in terms of the decisions he makes as president as it relates to foreign policy, those are things that are going to be hard to predict, because a lot of what he's saying now, I think, is intended to be political approaches to develop the power and the leverage he's going to need in the foreign policy arena. So I think there's a lot of bluffing going on. I think there's a lot of things he's saying publicly that may or may not be intended to implement, but it's being used to position himself in a way that he can negotiate deals on some of the critical foreign policy things, especially as it relates to the war in Ukraine, the situation in the Middle East, and also negotiations with China. I think a lot of the talk about Greenland and the Panama Canal are directly related to China.
You're referring to some of his rhetoric lately about taking more territory for the U.S., including Greenland, the Panama Canal, and even Canada. He wouldn't rule out, in speaking with the press, that he would use military and or economic force to do so. So do you think that that is just a negotiation tactic, or could he potentially move forward with something like that?
Well, I think a lot of it are negotiation tactics. He's trying to develop as much leverage that he can, and by not taking military action off the table, he's sending them a message that he's serious about this and wants to deal. And even though it's likely that may not happen on most of these things in terms of needing to use military action, the threat of it can be important. The U.S. has the biggest economy in the world. We have the biggest military in the world, and countries take what we say very seriously.
What about the reaction to some Americans who may feel worried about some of these things?
I think most of the Americans who are worried are people who voted against Trump. But the worry may extend beyond that. And I think they're listening to what Trump is saying and assuming that it's the policies he's going to pursue, as opposed to setting up threats to persuade other countries to do what he wants to do without necessarily carrying through on military threats or threats of gigantic tariffs or whatever it might be.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about tariffs. That was obviously one of his big campaign promises. How do you expect the implementation of that to play out? And anything in the polling about how popular that plan is, post-election or not?
On tariffs, it depends how you ask the question, and it depends on what country you're talking about, and it depends on what's the purpose of the tariff. Is it to raise more money? Is it a device to make trade fair? Or is it just a threat to get another country to do what we want to do on something unrelated to tariffs? So it's complex now, and of course there is a lot of concern about it. There's a lot of businesses, small businesses, big businesses, that can be directly affected by raising tariffs, particularly if they're raised considerably. My guess is that when it's all said and done, there may be some tariffs that are increased. But I think mostly what we're going to see is the use of increased tariffs as a club to beat other countries into submission on a variety of economic and political policies.
Another big talking point on the campaign trail was immigration. Trump has promised mass deportations. So how realistic is that? There's been some reports saying how expensive it would be and that how many detention centers would be needed. How do you expect this to be implemented? And what do you expect from Trump in terms of actually following through?
Well, I think there will be deportations, and I think the early deportations will focus on deporting people who have criminal backgrounds and records. And that would be very popular. And my guess is they're going to focus on that as much as possible. And in terms of going beyond that, it's hard to say. The president has a lot of supporters and constituencies in the business community, in the farming and agricultural community, in the construction industry, the home building industry, that relies very heavily on immigrants. I don't think ultimately there's going to be the kind of mass deportation of millions and millions and millions of illegal immigrants the way many people fear. I think it would be very difficult to make happen. And I think there's going to be too many economic constituencies that Donald Trump will listen to who are going to be opposing that fully.
Another movement that's kind of come along with MAGA is the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again movement. So what policies do you expect RFK Jr. or others to actually put into place when it comes to some of the health and wellness issues?
The politically safest thing for them is to focus on food. A lot of Americans are concerned about the health and safety of food products and how they're put together, how they're processed, how they're sold. And that's never really been much of an issue in the United States since the early 1900s. The same thing would apply to drugs and pharmaceuticals. There may be some issues there to cut the cost of drugs and prescription drugs, and that could be very popular with the American people. Now, when you get into vaccinations and vaccines, that becomes a different story. The public wants to have the ability to vaccinate themselves, to vaccinate their children, and they really don't want government at this stage of the game to stop that or to prohibit it. So it depends what it is. If it looks like they're trying to do something on an ideological basis where we're going to get rid of vaccines and prevent vaccines, that will be very, very unpopular. But if it looks like they're trying to actually protect consumers and patients and to lower prices, that could be very popular.
Still ahead, we talk about why high prices might be difficult for Trump to bring down and what Trump's supporters may have to say about it. Faucheux also tells us what might happen behind the scenes to get Trump's cabinet picks confirmed in the Senate. That and more of what you might expect next. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. Maybe you're done giving gifts to other people in your life from the holiday season, but what about giving to yourself this new year? Thanks to Quince, you can get quality, luxurious items at an affordable price, so no need to feel guilty about it. This time of year is perfect to get yourself an iconic Mongolian cashmere sweater, which starts at just $50, or check out their washable silk items. I adore my washable silk tank from Quince, and that I don't need to go to the dry cleaner after wearing it. They also have beautiful jewelry, leather handbags, luggage, and more. I was just checking out their amazing coat options, too, if you still need a new one for winter. And whatever you're looking for, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They're able to do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, passing the savings on to you. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. So treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/newsworthy for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/newsworthy to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/newsworthy. The Newsworthy is also brought to you by Honeylove. I'm a fan of Honeylove for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, their products are great. Shapewear that is designed to move with you, no rolling up and down while you're trying to hit the dance floor or even just walk around. And I actually like the design of this shapewear. Honeylove shapewear is perfect for any special event. And you know I love their leggings, too, for my everyday wardrobe. Great fabric, convenient pockets, perfect waist support and fit. But there's also the company that I appreciate. It's a female-founded brand designed by women who actually wear the products to know they're good. And their messaging and products are always inclusive of different types of bodies. So treat yourself to the best bras, shapewear, and leggings on the market. Save 20% off Honeylove at honeylove.com/newsworthy. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off honeylove.com/newsworthy to find your perfect fit. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you've heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Elevate your comfort, elevate your style with Honeylove. Okay, now back to our conversation. Inflation was also a big issue, but all of these policies could potentially impact inflation. What are you seeing in terms of expectations and how this might play out from some of these policies impacting, prices at the grocery store?
Trump said it recently. He said, well, it's going to be very hard to bring down prices. And that's absolutely true, because throughout the last several years, when prices have gone up so much, and then the rate of increase of prices, the rate of increase of inflation has gone down more recently. Voters' response to that was, well, it's fine if the rate of increase of inflation is going down, but prices are still a lot higher than they were a year or two or three ago. And when you talk about rate of increase in prices, you're still talking about increased prices. And Donald Trump's campaign, the Republican campaign, focused on the cost of living, but that distinction really wasn't made in terms of, are we going to get rid of inflation, lower the rate of inflation, or are we actually going to start rolling back prices that have gone up over the last few years? And it's hard to lower prices.
Do you think there's going to be a disconnect between what Trump supporters heard on the campaign trail and are expecting and what is going to be reality? Or do you think, supporters will go along, well, Trump knows best, we'll just go with what he thinks should actually be put in place?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. And because I think the biggest concerns and risks that Trump and the Republicans have right now is the economy. He got a lot of credit for building a strong economy when he was president previously, probably more credit than he deserved. So people are going to be looking at him to improve the economy. Their expectations are high on what he's going to do. And because it's about prices and pricing, it makes it really hard to do it. It's not something like if you're just trying to create jobs, for example. You can pump money in the economy and create jobs, but you can't buy low prices. And so in this particular case, they're going to have a tougher time. Now, having said that, I think a lot of Trump supporters will go along with the president and trust that he will do the best he can on the issue. But I do think it stands as one of the issues that's potentially a political problem for him because of the way it was campaigned on and because of the difficulty and reality of changing prices.
President-elect Trump has recently been criticizing California Governor Gavin Newsom for actions that Trump blames for the devastating wildfires in the Los Angeles area right now. Do you expect natural disaster funding to be impacted in these types of circumstances once President-elect Trump becomes president?
Even though there may be some constituencies that don't want to bail out cities and states and local governments for some of these disasters, I think the combined population centers that are subject to these risks will work together to get the federal government to give them significant help.
Are you kind of saying, regardless of what President-elect Trump does, lawmakers in Congress will likely come together for that funding for a variety of natural disasters?
Yeah, I think so, because if Republicans who represent Florida and Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and South Carolina go to him and say, we have to have help. We have to have flood insurance. We have to have a well-funded FEMA. The president is going to have to listen to those people.
How much of Trump's agenda do you think he'll be able to get through Congress versus, try through executive orders and other means?
Well, I think that's something they're trying to figure out now. And I think the answer is they can get a lot done. Now, when you get into issues that require 60 votes in the Senate, they only have 53 votes. So to get things passed in the Senate, they're going to have to win over 7 Democrats to do that.
But you're not expecting too much infighting between Republicans. Even getting Speaker Johnson reelected was a challenge. It was close. And so could that end up being a challenge for Congress as well?
Well, it's always a challenge. It's a challenge every day. But I think what we've been saying, the games that were played with the speaker recently, I think what's happening there is the right wing of the Republican Party, they're setting down their markers. We're telling Mike Johnson, we're telling the leadership, we're going to be with you, but we'll only be with you if you're going to be with us on things that we want to. When you're in government, you always have to depend on other people to get things done. And those other people don't always see things the way you do. So there's going to be compromising. There's going to be some things won't pass, some things will pass. But I think the Republicans do have a chance if they move quickly and they talk about it in the right way to the American people. I think they can get a lot done pretty quickly.
Trump has already faced some high-profile controversies in his reported cabinet picks, most notably Matt Gaetz's withdrawal from attorney general consideration. Is there anyone still in the running that's really standing out to you? And do you expect ultimately the people that Trump has put up for these positions ultimately getting through the Senate?
I think it's always possible that maybe one or two of these nominees may not make it. It doesn't take much to stop it. But I think where it is now is what they're trying to do is they're going to try to lay everything out and talk to the Republican senators and say, look, if you'd like to vote against one or two of these nominees, let's work it out in a way where the votes against the nominees won't be enough to kill it. So that if you want to vote maybe against the Secretary of Defense nominee and the DNI nominee, we can't have you do both, but you can pick one. And then if you want to vote against Kennedy's nomination for Health and Human Services, that's fine if we only have one or two votes against it. So they may figure out a way to mix and match the votes that give some of the Republican senators who have some problems with some of these nominees a chance to cast what would be, in effect, meaningless votes against them. And my guess is if there isn't new information that comes out, they'll probably be able to do it on most of these nominees.
We've seen a lot of unprecedented things during this election season on both sides of the aisle. What has stood out to you, and or what do you expect that might be unprecedented moving forward? And kind of just a final thought right before Trump takes office.
The thing to watch, nobody's talking about it now, is the possibility of getting rid of the Senate filibuster rule. The Republicans could do that anytime they wanted. In the past, both they and the Democrats have tightened up the use of the rule. And if you ever get to a big bill that the Republicans are trying to pass, but they don't have the votes in the Senate because of the Senate filibuster rule, the question is, will they take a shot at getting rid of it? It would take all the Republican senators pretty much to unite on that, and the Republican leadership and Donald Trump to unite on that. But if it's something really big that they want, they may well do it.
Any broad final thought ahead of Inauguration Day?
Well, the thing about Donald Trump is he's unpredictable. Some of the unpredictability has to do with him changing his mind. Some of the unpredictability has to do with members of Congress and Republicans going to him and telling him, hey, we just can't do this or that you want. And some of it is part of a strategy to build up his leverage. There's a lot of complex things to watch. It's going to be a fascinating game board.
Well, thank you so much to Dr. Ron Faucheux for sharing his expertise with us today. You can sign up for his free daily political newsletter, Lunchtime Politics, on his website, lunchtimepolitics.com. And don't forget to join us again on Monday. We will be catching you up on all the news you may have missed over the weekend in just about 10 minutes. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend.